Folks, and welcome to Power to Negotiate. Today's session is going to be on money stretchers. You're going to say, Reed, what in the world is a money stretcher? A money stretcher is something you use to make a deal work other than money. And the original concept of this came from the genius Jimmy Napier. But every time that you're putting a deal together, what you want to do is find out exactly what the seller needs. And maybe you can give them what they need rather than cash. For instance, I was out in Colorado Springs, and Joe White was dealing with this one couple, and he was buying their house, and they needed about $5,000 so they could move to Kansas. And so Joe said, so tell me exactly what you're going to be using the money for. And they said, well, we need to go ahead and rent a truck. So if I could get the truck for you, that would help. Okay, what else do you need the money for? I said, well, when we get there, we need to have the deposit for an apartment to move into. Okay, so you need to be able to move into an apartment. So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is you need to be able to get the truck over there, move your stuff, as well as get into an apartment. So if I could handle that for you, that would solve your needs, correct? They said yes. So what he did was, he went through his Rolodex, contact manager nowadays, and he found people that owed him favors. And he found someone that would go ahead and do a deadhead run. They were coming out to Colorado, and they were doing a deadhead run back to Kansas, and they could drop by this stuff, and it wouldn't cost them any money. Great. This is a trucker that had an empty route coming from Colorado Springs back to Kansas. And then he contacted the apartment complex that they're going to be moving into, and he negotiated with them so that they would not need the money up front, but they would put it on the back end by having a slightly longer term. If they would go ahead and sign up for a year and a half, they would allow them to move in without having any deposit up front. Now, what exactly did he do? He used his ingenuity, and he determined that he was able to find a way to get people what they needed without any cash coming out of his pocket. What happens if you have an old subdivision lot, or if you have a timeshare, or if you have a condo, and it's just something that's eating a hole in your pocket? Could you take that something that you want to get rid of and use that as part of the down payment in order to sweeten the deal a little bit for someone else? And what is that lot worth? How much of a down payment are they looking for? So if you have a piece of dirt that's been sitting there for a year or two, could that be worth $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000? It's whatever the seller will accept. And so sometimes you can use a money stretcher rather than cash to sweeten a deal. But I want you to go through and inventory everything that you have and everything that you have access to, and ask yourself, can I use this rather than using cash? And if you use enough ingenuity, sometimes you can buy a property without any cash out of pocket. Now, you're always going to need a little bit of cash, but does it have to be yours? Can you go ahead and work this deal out so that the other party is putting up most of the cash? Let's talk for just a second on closing cost. Whenever I'm buying a property, I always want to be fair. So when I'm buying the property or when I'm selling the property, I want to have the other side paying the closing costs. So if I'm buying the property, I want the seller to pay the closing costs. When I'm selling the property, I want the buyer to pay all the closing costs. So as long as I'm fair, I don't mind doing that. And your closing cost can be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 depending upon what all is involved. And if you can sort of nudge that over to the other side of the column so that the other party's paying for that, that will make it a lot easier to get into deals. Another reason I like doing lease options, because with the lease option, you're structuring deals so you don't really have a whole lot of cash out of pocket. You're asking the sellers or the lease option, the optionors, to pay the first 3 months of payments, and then you're going to work like crazy to find a tenant buyer to move in there, and you ask the tenant buyer to give you at least 3 to 5% non-refundable option fee up front and start making the payments. So you've got basically 3 months to work with, and if you get somebody else in there ahead of that time, would you have them start making the payments right away? Yes, to you. And then you will start making the payments after the end of the first 3 months. Does that make sense? In everything that you do, you want to be thinking, what can I use other than cash?